Let me see. Oh, there we go. Well, I kind of want to say good morning to all of you because I'm still in morning mode, but good afternoon. I'm so excited to be here to talk to you today about creating schools that work for kids. So, a little bit of background about me really quick. I was a science teacher at a school a little bit outside New York City, and then I became a principal. And what I want to kind of do today is share a story with you of how we took a school that was very traditional, where we were looked at by traditional metrics, our standardized test scores, which weren't very good, and we transformed it from the ground up. And not only did we increase every metric that we were judged on, but we were able to do things for our kids such as personalizing their transcripts, allowing them to take open courses from Harvard, Yale, MIT, and giving them credit towards graduation, virtual course options, all these things that we didn't think were possible because of our mindset. So, that's me on Twitter. If you care to connect with me, I will warn you, I tweet just a little bit. But it really was social media that sort of helped break us from our silo. We rarely look outside of our buildings for inspiration, for ideas, for knowledge on how we can really do what we do better. And that was the predicament that we were in, is that we thought we were doing a good job. We thought we had all the answers. We thought we had to chase that carrot, get those scores, and everything would be great. But it wasn't so great. So as we think about education today, and we think about change that's happening, the world is changing because of technology. We get that. The landscape in our schools, in our classrooms, for our learners is dramatically changing. But the most significant shift are the changes that are occurring to our learners. And it's not that they're learning differently per se, but the environment in which they learn is dramatically different. All we have to do is look at games such as Minecraft and Pokemon Go and talk to our youngest learners to find out what they're passionate about. And that's the key, is passion. So the question comes down to is not how will you engage digital learners? How well are we engaging digital learners in the content and process of learning? How well are we really doing? And more often than not, we as the adults come up with the answer to that question. We think about, we look at our metrics, we talk to each other, and we find that we think, we're doing an okay job. But the question comes down to, are we really doing a good job to meet the needs of all the changes that are occurring? So I ask you to think about, how well are you doing? And it's not much what we think. Talk to your kids. We can talk about all the theory, all the research, all the data, but it doesn't matter if our kids don't see the value in school. In 2009, a student looked me in the eye when I ran around my building taking devices, because that's what I did. And that student had the guts to tell me that school was like a jail. We thought we were doing a good job, but we need to start talking to our kids, because traditionally schools have worked well for adults. Think about everything that we do, from curriculum to standards to our policies and our procedures. But would you want to be a student in the same classrooms as your learners? Would you want to be a student in the same classrooms as your own children? That answer gives us a lot of perspective on, maybe some things have to change. And as we think about change, how can we prepare kids for the future if we are stuck in the past? And it's not just we as schools, but we as organizations, and more importantly, we as learners. Are we stuck in the past? Or are we shifting our mindset, our thinking towards the future to better prepare our kids and create systems that will better prepare our kids? And as we think about this quote, think about how we are judged. Think about how schools are judged, how kids are judged. And this next image kind of puts everything in perspective. Oh, it's the next image after this. I got ahead of myself. Is school relevant? Am I relevant? what would our kids think? It's a tough question, because when we started really thinking about this question, we finally realized that we had to change our course. And as we think about changing course, if this is what our schools do a good job of, ultimately we have failed our kids. Because life, and I'm not saying tests are not important. I'm not saying that. They are one metric. But I will tell you, I've seen Ivy League graduates from Harvard and Yale, the best test takers, who couldn't even get a job. So as we think about what our kids really need, and we think about what truly is important, think about success. Think about your success. Think about the success of the people you emulate. And it wasn't because of how well you were able to regurgitate information. It was how you were able to take information, turn it into knowledge, and turn that knowledge into action, and do things that you normally thought weren't possible. And as we think about these qualities, how do cultures in your classrooms, your schools, your countries support, foster these qualities? So as we think about what needs to change, and we think about our learners, it comes back to that. How do we create schools that work for kids? The best thing that all of us can do, regardless of what level you teach, the age group of your kids you teach, or even if you teach, is ask kids, what do they think about their classrooms, their schools? Some kids are frustrated, some are bored, some have a lack of direction. If we don't know this, it's a little more difficult to act. So as we think about having those conversations and thinking about, is it time to do something better? There's no better time than now. Because the world is filled, if we're willing to break through our silos and get off our isolated islands, the world is full of all these amazing ideas and technology. It's waiting right there for us. But the question is, are we willing to embrace? But more importantly, are your colleagues willing to embrace and change their thinking?
I used to be a cat. Every day the same. I'd be aloof till lunch, then coldly indifferent after. To me, everything was just meh. Then it hit me. Why be so cat? Why not be a bit more dog? I mean, look at the world today. It's amazing. Running, amazing. Chasing cars, amazing. Sticks, amazing. Carpe diem. It means grab the frisbee. Maybe we should all be a bit more dog.
Be more dog. Start now at Be More.
I show that video because the number one enemy we face is right here. It's our mindset. We're so afraid if it doesn't work, or what other people might think, or if our scores will go down. So if we are willing to embrace different thinking, we might ultimately get better results. So as we think about creating schools that work for kids, this was the recipe that we followed. We took a traditional system, and we looked at not just integrating technology, but integrating it with purpose, aligned to higher standards and better learner outcomes. We embraced mobile technology, as opposed to just putting policies in place to prohibit it from our kids. We looked at research and redefined where our kids learn. We made attempts to make learning personal. And lastly, we stopped focusing on numbers and letters, grades, and made some simple shifts to focus more on learning, which ultimately resulted in a 75% decrease in the amount of kids that were failing and our best standardized test scores ever. So as we think about integrating technology with purpose to create schools that work for kids, think about, what do you really want your kids to be able to do with technology? The stuff is flashy. Everybody loves the stuff. But technology is a tool. It is not a silver bullet. Tools can be used effectively or ineffectively. If we focus on the left, how many apps can we use? Or, having kids create, word clouds and produce videos and develop apps. So what? What do you want that learner outcome to be? And what do you want kids to be able to do that aligns to those essential qualities in the slide I showed before? Where we get kids to focus on learning that's going to carry with them in a world where we don't know what the jobs are going to look like a few months from now. We don't know what problems kids are going to have to solve. So how do we get them to learn in ways that they couldn't do it without the technology? How do we get them to still focus on what's important, which is inquiry and thinking? Because sometimes with tech, we lose focus on, well, we're not going to do it because we can't do all this stuff. But when we think about inquiry, how do we get kids to pose real questions, find resources? How do we get them to vet resources? Right now, there's an epidemic in our world, fake news. Oh my goodness, with the presidential election we just had in my country, oh my goodness, fake news is everywhere. And our kids can't determine what's real and what's fake. So how do we get them to find quality resources? How do we get them to interpret information? And the best part is, step 1, 2, and 3, you don't even need to use technology. The beauty of technology is to empower kids to take ownership over their learning so they can demonstrate inquiry, critical thought, by reporting what they know, what they can do, by selecting the right tool for the right task. We didn't ask our teachers to learn technology. We asked them to build better assessments. And then we let our kids choose that right tool for that right task. Because ultimately, with all the stuff in the world, if we don't get instructional design right first, all technology is going to do is speed up the rate of failure. All we have to do is look at the OECD report from last fall, which basically said that. Teaching, learning, and leadership need to change, but we also have to make sure that pedagogical foundation is firmly in place before we set all these expectations to integrate, infuse all these tools. We want it to have purpose, aligned to our curriculum, aligned to our standards, but we also want it to be relevant for our kids. So William Horton gives us this good advice. And ultimately, when we think about creating schools that work for kids, pedagogy trumps technology. We look at all these tech and all these claims for engagement. Yeah, technology might engage kids, but if that engagement doesn't lead to actual evidence of learning, what's the point? And as we think about pedagogy, Michael Fullen reminds us that, pedagogy is the driver. Technology is the accelerator. We want all that great stuff happening, but we have to focus on that core. And the core, critical thinking, knowledge taxonomy, rigorous learning, deeper learning, whatever you want to call it, it's still important. No matter what curriculum you have to cover, no matter what standards, no matter what tests your kids are going to take. The action verbs, the actions are still sort of the same. But what has to change are our expectations, our instructional design, our assessments, and allowing kids that ownership to select the right tool for the right task. Our problem was we had no vision. We had no consistent vision, language, expectations. We were all over the place. We didn't even know what the teacher next door was doing. As administrators, we didn't know what any of our teachers were doing. So how can we improve what we do and make sure that technology is being integrated effectively? How do we really know? I had no idea what was going on in my classrooms. Why? Because I didn't evaluate my teachers enough. We changed that. We started formally evaluating every teacher 5 times every year. 5 non-evaluative walkthroughs a day by every admin on my team. Looking at our assessments instead of lesson plans, but making sure that our pedagogy, our instruction, focused on that critical thinking that we wanted for our kids, but also that it had relevance, that they could apply their learning across disciplines to solve real-world predictable problems, real-world unpredictable problems. Because I'm willing to wager your goals are the same as mine. What do we need for our learners? What do you want for your learners? in your respective schools, in your respective countries. We want them to have the competence to think in complex ways. This Quad D learning, it's authentic, it's relevant, it's applicable. When we started changing to make sure that technology would meet its lofty expectations, here's what our kids did. What do I need to do to get an A? What's the least amount of work I have to do to pass? What do you mean, show me what I learned? Give me a multiple choice test. We had brainwashed our kids, starting in primary grades, that they were adverse to open-ended inquiry. So as we worked to change, and everyone's like, oh, with technology, it's going to give me more work to do. I have all these pressures. It shouldn't be about more work. It's already focused on what we are already doing in our roles as educators. The difference is, how do we make sure that when we're implementing technology, that we're getting results? What does that evidence look like? Not only did we were able to align our metrics, standardized test scores, graduation rates, promotion rates, attendance rates, drops in discipline, we looked at portfolios of our kids. We looked at portfolios of our teachers. We were getting in classrooms more. We were archiving and collecting evidence after evidence to paint a picture of how not only we were integrating technology with purpose, but how it really was impacting our kids in positive ways. We also looked at mobile. Don't worry, everybody, I have a digital handout for you at the end. All the stuff is there. You just have to be quick when that last slide comes up, just make sure you scan it. Got you covered. All right, mobile. Oh, we can't use devices. Oh my goodness, think about the work that we do. In 3 years, the number one device to connect to the internet is going to be the smartphone. And when we look at mobile, the key to integrating it is focusing on the work we already do. It's not unleashing the floodgates and say, let kids bring their devices to school. Well, if they're not using the devices to support learning, again, it's a waste of time and a waste of money. So as we think about, wow, I only got 5 minutes left. Oh my goodness, that went by fast. It's as we said, do now, check if everything, assessment, closure, homework reminders. But make sure your success is, focus on infrastructure, your vision, planning, develop aligned policies, provide professional development, work on educating your kids, your parents, putting money aside. The best part about mobile is that we should no longer be able to ask questions our kids can Google the answers to. That was our ultimate goal, and that's what we were looking for. So as we think about also mobile, think about redefining where our kids learn. Research has shown that classroom design can impact learning by as much as 25%, positive or negative. Everything from furniture, layout, colors, acoustics, temperature. What designs would you want to learn in? What designs do your kids want to learn in? Half the battle is getting kids to want to learn. Look at the colors. Look at this space. Look at the flexible furniture. Instead of hard desks, think about yoga balls. Think about what your kids want. Think about, do the spaces actually look like the real world and feel like the real world, where they get to apply those skills in relevant ways. Think about the buildings that we have, and think about how we can start incorporating spaces using design thinking and aligned to research. But think more importantly, what does it look like when the school works for kids, when we give up control, trust kids, and let them own their learning? This school in an inner city in the United States, rocking chairs, ottomans, hoodies, all kinds of great stuff. Think about making the space accommodating for the kids. Thinking games, charging stations, coffee pots, nap rooms. That's my school. That's what we did for our kids after they told us what they wanted. We gave our kids access to 3D printers, makey-makeys, simple circuits, letting them do things, real-world tools to do real-world work. Our most disadvantaged kids, our kids with severe learning disabilities, flourished in this spot. And we created a space where our kids wanted to be, and they actually got to learn with their hands. And as we think about learning, we think about personalization. Personalization is not about what. It's not about what we teach, what's in the curriculum, what's on the test. It's about who. And it's about making that shift from the what to the who to emphasize learning. And as we think about that shift and we think about knowledge, how it's used, relevant, authentic context, building on diverse strengths and needs of kids, fostering independence, ownership of learning, Ways to facilitate learning. Use of tech to support and enhance it. It's all in the handout. Project-based, blended. I know, it's all there. When we think about blended, what do we want our kids to do? Blended, flipped, we want our kids to actually focus on what they do best. We had our kids watch 10-minute videos and then apply what they've learned in their classrooms. In the class, and sorry, the timing things. I got 5 more, okay. Whew. I'm not good with time, but I don't use that as an excuse. So you'll see in my handout what our kids were doing, bringing their own devices to school, setting up personalized activities for them, where they had embedded assessments, where they got real-time, teachers got real-time feedback. Think about micro-credentials and digital badging. Instead of grades, think about when kids demonstrate mastery of a skill. They get a badge. Why does that work? Because badges have been long part of what we do. A badge is a visual representation of a skill or achievement. We had badges for kids and badges for our teachers when they learned and demonstrated mastery. Then there's virtual learning. Breaking down the brick and mortar walls. Why? No space and time restrictions, flexible schemes, greater responsibility, expanding horizons, interest-based. We had a virtual learning academy for our kids that opened up 250 plus courses to our kids that they took with other kids all over the world. We created our own virtual learning platform for our kids. There's self-paced learning platforms that you can create your own learning expeditions for your kids, and they're all free. And then there's open courseware. Harvard, Yale, MIT, Stanford. You could have your kids take the best courses. And then the key is having them show us what they've learned. And lastly, no more zeros, retakes, redos, and a failure floor. We initiated those 3 items because we were failing kids. We weren't working to ensure that they were actually learning. We put 7 steps that my teachers had to show with evidence before any kid was allowed to fail. And all those steps were aligned to their job. But the key was, we collected the grades from every kid, and every quarter, I reviewed every failing grade. And I overturned any student failure where those 7 pieces of evidence was not provided. All in all, creating a school that works for kids should look more messy. It shouldn't look like a school. It should look like this free-range learning environment, a free-range learning environment where kids learn these skills. And ultimately, for transformation to occur at scale, we can't be satisfied with isolated pockets of excellence. Technology will not transform education. You and how you effectively use technology to empower your learners in ways that were never possible, in ways that were meaningful, that is what will transform education. I've written a few books on the topic, but it's in the handout. All right, and there, speaking of handout, I got you all covered. Everything is there. Notes, links, examples, it's all there. And I don't even know, I don't know, we don't have any time for questions, right? Oh, we got time.